We're recording.
All right, let's kick it off. Hi, everybody. I'm Liza Fromer. I hope you enjoyed that screening of Quickening. Just a gorgeous film. Love having you here with us. I want to send out a really quick thank you as well to our screening partners, Sheridan Alumni and Women United, who have helped make this possible. And a thank you to Natasha Meester for her incredible performance. Now, here we go. Let's get to the main attractions. Congratulations on the film, ladies. Haya Waseem is joining me. She's the director and the writer, as well as lead actress Arooj Azeem, who played Sheila. Hello.
Hi.
Nice to see you, ladies. Haya, you are in Spain right now?
I am, yes.
For work?
I am, yeah. I'm working on a project here. I'm just in the edit, so you might hear it a little bit in the background, but that's why I'm here.
No problem at all. That is fantastic. I'm so happy to spend Women's Day with you. We're pre-recording this on International Women's Day, so thank you for doing this for us. Haya, let's start talking about the fact that you are the writer and the director. This is your first big film. This must feel incredibly personal, obviously. Putting this out there into the world now, is that nerve-wracking when there's so much of you going out for public consumption?
I mean, it is nerve-wracking for sure, but the beautiful thing is that it's still a work of fiction. So, you know, I can put all my emotion into it, but I can also hide behind the fact that it's not actually my story. So I think it's the perfect balance. It's like a little bit of therapy and a little bit of art all mixed together. And that's what, you know, keeps me excited. So when people watch and they can relate to it, I feel like that's what I focus on more rather than how much of me is out there.
Right. So what inspired this story then? Was there, if it wasn't you, was there someone you knew, or was it looking around at the communities around you?
I mean, it is a personal story, the emotional core of a character who's struggling to define their identity. I mean, I think it's quite a universal story of a coming of age of a young person trying to identify, you know, who they are and where they belong and what values they hold close to themselves. So that was the emotional core that came from me. And then in terms of the premise and a woman who's experiencing a psychological pregnancy, a pregnancy delusion, I met a psychiatrist who, you know, in Pakistan was running a stable where my sisters were taking lessons. And I was like, oh, how was your day? And she told me that she had this patient who was going through a pregnancy delusion. I was just fascinated by the phenomenon. And then that piece was the perfect element for me to explore a character who is, you know, keeping everything internalized. And how does that brew in your belly? And when, you know, how does that push you beyond a point that you would otherwise, you know, stay within boundaries. So that's what inspired me, was a little bit of intrigue, and then the emotions and the narrative all came from, you know, my personal experience. And then Arooj became a part of that too, right? Because when I shared the story with her, she related to it in her own way. So I always say it's a story of a specific character. But a lot of people poured their personal stories and emotions into that one character.
Let's bring Arooj into the conversation. Welcome. Sheila is such a beautifully developed, rich character. And I think, you know, so many women can, if not in all of her struggles, can pick out parts of her struggles that they have felt as they become a woman and find their voice. So Arooj, tell me first how you sort of got involved in the film.
Honestly, I was just in my backyard playing with my dog, and my dad was on his phone with Haya's dad, and he was like really excited, like proud dad moment. He's like, oh, my daughter's doing her first film. Like it's, I'm so excited. And, you know, they were having another chat, and then my dad just looked at me and he's like, Uji, would you want to they call me Uji, that's my nickname. They're like, would you want to audition for the film? And I was like, is it Haya's film? And he was like, yeah. And then I was like, yeah, then I'll do it. So then it started with auditioning. And then once it kind of got narrowed down, that's when we got on the phone with Haya. And basically my entire family was on a group call, and Haya didn't know that. We were just like sitting with my dad like this, like listening to her story. And then by the end of that call, we were all like, yep, this is perfect.
And what people may not know is, Arooj, that those are actually your parents
Yeah.
playing your parents. So part of the reason I expect why everybody was on the call, they're quite well-known actors in their own right, correct?
Yes, back home, my dad is a director and my mom produces his movies.
And that's back home in Pakistan.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Haya, what was it during the audition process that let you know that Arooj was going to be your Sheila?
I mean, it was just like an immediate, like, you know, we were searching for a while. We'd gotten tons of tapes, and the family dynamics were so important. So the fact that, I mean, originally I went to Asher and Bushra to play the parents because, you know, we weren't receiving that many submissions for those roles. And I hadn't seen Arooj since she was a little kid, like 8 years old or something. So now suddenly she was 21, and, you know, and at the exact age cusp of like the character. And so when I saw the audition, the dynamics of the family and the richness that came from that, and also the parallel kind of experiences, it was just like I didn't need to write anymore. Like they could fill in the details and make me look better as a writer because they had so much, like, you know, real life experience and nuance that came in. So it was immediately like, okay, we found the family, we found Sheila, and Arooj really, like, it completely turned the process into another thing once I saw her audition.
You got a 3-for-1 deal.
Yes.
Smart.
A gift.
Well done. Arooj, what were there any sort of you know, special strangeness to the fact that you're working with your parents, but this is also like incredibly deep, and, you know, sometimes it's not so comfortable to be having these conversations with your parents, being vulnerable in the way you were being vulnerable. And I suspect if you were with actors, it would be one, or like actors you hadn't known previously, but with your own parents, was it hard to get out of your own way at all sometimes? Because I feel like I'd be in my head about it. How did you deal with that?
I was definitely nervous for sure, just because even though you've lived with someone your whole life, you don't know how they are professionally. I've never worked with my parents before then, and especially doing Haya's film, like I was very young when I met Haya, and she was like this older, cool, like sister figure, and I wanted to make her proud. So getting the movie and working on the set, I tried to develop this reputation where I wanted to be very present and I wanted to do my best. So adding my parents, like I didn't know if that would affect me at all or anything like that. But the best part of it was, like, I got very lucky because my dad is an actor and my mom was a producer. So the drives to set, we would all talk about, you know, this is how we're going to get into character. We would kind of just stay quiet, listen to music. Everyone would get in that zone. And then once we would shoot the scenes, because obviously a lot of the movies, relationships is not like how my family is in real life. But the beauty was that we could all act and we could all kind of bring those dynamics of what a daughter experiences when parents are going through hardship, what a mother experiences when she sees that her daughter's struggling but can't really connect to them. So the deeper parts we could bring, but and that helped with the story. And then once I would say cut, we would all like have lunch together, and it would all be normal again. So it was a very great experience overall.
And I want to talk about, because it you know, was interesting to me as I was starting to watch the film and get deeper and deeper into it. I just kept thinking about the idea that there's, you know, depending on who you are, a right kind of woman to be the right kind of daughter, wife, you know, all those different things, the gender expectations that come along with that. And can you talk a bit about that, Haya, as you were creating the script? And it just seemed like there were sort of interesting archetypes as we went along. There's a woman who you pan in on her stomach at a party who's pregnant, and she seems like the perfect mother in waiting almost. And you know, Sheila's struggling to fulfill the expectation of it, what it means for her to be a woman coming out into the world. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, those were definitely like the central themes. I mean, of course, the identity and like culture are central to the film, but for me, what was really at the core of the film and what I was passionate about was like a woman and a young woman, or you know, and older women and matriarchs, and you know, so I was thinking a lot about female, you know, capacity for birth, and you know, so those were all themes that I was admiring and adoring and I wanted to honor in some way, and part of that was, what are expectations of women and of a female body and of a female mind, but also so some things became very like archetypal, and other things became like a contradiction to that. And I allowed both those things to exist in the same space. And that's what felt true to me. It wasn't that, you know, like a woman has to fill this role and that's the only dimension that we can explore. There's also at the same time unexpected elements, unexpected reactions, whether that be from the mother when Sheila finally, you know, has her breakdown. You know, it's not the typical reaction of anger or, you know, dismissal or anything like that. And I think Sheila fears that would be the case. So I've always been interested in, you know, defying those expectations. I made a film before this, a short film called Shahzad, which was about a young immigrant boy. And I remember people's comments at that time were that they all expected that the classmates would bully him and that the story would be about that dynamic. But I find it was the internal struggle that was more captivating and interesting to me than the narrative of external pressure and conflict. So yeah, to answer your question, it was just, what are the archetypes, but also what are the contradictions, and how do those two things exist at the same time? Because in my view, those things are always existing together at the same time.
Right. And then of course there's the layer that you explore as well, that when you're dealing with all those things and all of the expectations and whether you're going to meet them or flip them on their head, I think every woman goes through that. But then you of course have the extra layer of being part of a family, an immigrant family from Pakistan who has, you know, maybe different cultural expectations. So then that becomes a tug of war as well, correct?
Yeah, exactly. There's many layers. It was like one layer reveals another. And I think the beauty and the peace comes from like, yeah, okay, invite them all in and let them, you know, mingle. That was what felt, because there's a lot of anxiety, right? If you consider all those layers in one at a time, I think it's easier to get overwhelmed by them, or to start to analyze them in a way that could create certain fears or whatever negative connotations you could associate with that. But when you mix another element into it, it kind of creates harmony in some way. So for me, the only way to find balance in that narrative and to come to some sort of a breakthrough at the end of the narrative was to layer all those things together and not look at them too individually. Look at them as a whole.
Right, because certainly that's the way things work in life. You know, certain things bleed into the next, and you're trying to keep them all organized in your life, wearing, you know, whether it's a mother hat or a daughter hat or a boss hat or whatever it happens to be. And you can't ever necessarily just leave those in their little boxes. They're going to come together. Arooj, let's talk more about that character development and those layers and how you get there as an actor as a young woman as well, bringing life experience. What did it look like to build Sheila in your mind?
So once I talked to Haya and once I read the script, there was immediate, like there was an immediate reaction where I was like, I have to do this because it was like a weird fantasy of mine to like voice my experience that I had as an immigrant coming into Canada. So it was like I was like, oh my God, I can't believe someone finally did it. So there was that reaction to it, but also I made like little notes in my journals, and I would be like, okay, if I'm playing this character, because she's different from me in a lot of ways, but we also share a lot of similarities. So I would say, what music would she listen to? And I would kind of send those to Haya, like pictures of what I'd come up with or what fashion she would have. And I feel like it's easier to build something from the outside in instead of starting from the inside out. Just because that's how you look at people in real life, when you're looking at people in a natural environment, they're too dynamic for you to just completely insert yourself into their innermost thoughts. So I'd be like, okay, how would her dynamic maybe be with her friends? And I would take things from the script and I would kind of make notes about how I think she would interact with her friends, her family, the world around her. And then that sort of helped me come up with how she would exist emotionally.
Right. And did your parents help you along with that as well, having experience in the business, or did you just kind of want that to do that alone?
No, my parents didn't help me. I'm sure they would have if I asked, but I kind of, the best thing is I think my parents realized that I would have wanted some alone time doing that. Like I would spend a lot of time with Haya on the phone. I would talk to my friends a lot too. Like, oh, how do you think like this is the girl that I'm supposed to portray? What do you think she would be like? So it was mostly me and my friends, and obviously Haya helping me along the way.
Right. Haya, something else that I really loved about your film, which honestly is just so beautiful to look at. The aesthetic is just so rich and so like it's just a picture. You could freeze it almost anywhere, and you just got a beautiful the lighting, the framing, but also you let it take its time. I find, there wasn't a rush to things. One in particular moment when she was walking to tell her parents, and that walk feels like it takes 100 years, and you're just like, I swear I was on my couch bracing like, oh girl. talk about the pace and the breathing room. Why did you do that?
The character to me is very, she observes, she soaks it in, she, holds on. She doesn't necessarily let things out. She's always putting burden on her shoulders and must believe that she has infinite capacity. So the pacing of the film really felt like there was no need for hurry, because we weren't necessarily chasing after a narrative. We were exploring a character. So it just felt natural to observe a character that is an observer. And we don't get much access to Sheila emotionally, because of the way that she is. And so I found companionship with her in space and time was more appropriate. And distance paired with extreme closeness, like that was the space that we wanted to exist in. And I just I really love the tools of cinema and light, and so collaborating with the cinematographer, we really established a visual language for the film, which we let guide the shoot. And then in the edit, of course, with the editor, we really shaped the pacing of it. So it was a combination of on set, being inspired by the character and kind of complementing the nature of the narrative from an emotional character-based place. And then we carried that through in the edit as well.
Yeah, I found it so effective because, you know, as Sheila becomes more isolated and you know, withdrawing sort of into herself and things are getting worse and worse for her, the quietness and, like you're saying, either being very far away or very close up, both created tension without literally saying anything.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it was so effective. The other thing I want to
Thank
ask you about, as far as those things and the pacing and the visuals, are the dancers, and where, how that you kind of came up with that, what they were sort of a metaphor for, as well as the fact that I found, again, the tension that could build just watching them move around the room. And there was something about the way they used their bodies and the way they would speed up, where again, it felt like something could go off the rails in a second.
Yeah, I was really lucky to work with Sarah Swire, who I met on a previous project, and she's a choreographer, an actor, and I really leaned on her for all the body language, the performance pieces, and we had conversations about the character and what needed to be expressed through the choreography. And that was one of our earliest rehearsals. You know, we didn't get much rehearsal. We got a day of fitting, and you know, rehearsals was kind of built into that in backyards because it was COVID. So it was like, you know, it was not a formal process. But Arooj and Sarah developed that performance piece together by talking about what the character is experiencing, and turning it into key moves that created that performance. So and breaking it down that way, because I don't have any background in dance or physical movement or performance, but the process was made very intuitive, and what went into it in terms of establishing the body language was like very basic theater-based exercises, and the performances came out of like discussing what 3 elements the character might be experiencing, and then creating like a visual expression of that, and then just looping those elements to create the movement. And the other piece that, you know, so that was for Sheila, but then also for Eden, when he's, you know, with the 2 other women, intimacy is sensitive. You know, we're exploring a lot of sensitive topics in the film, and I always wanted to do them from a place of beauty, you know, whatever that beauty meant to me, and so I knew the intimacy would also come through in that beautiful expression of bodies, and again, it was kind of under the gun pressure of like the last 30 minutes of that shoot day, and we're like, okay, let's just go for it. And you know, and so whatever came out was kind of really, you know, it was really intuitive. I would say it was very much the body telling us what to do.
Arooj, can you add to that a little bit, how you got to that process?
Yeah, so basically I think why the performance was like close to me was because Sarah and Haya, they were kind of leading me through it, and they asked, and Sarah was like, what are your like physical tells that you're, you know, you're anxious? And I'm not a very expressive person like to other people, so I was like, oh, I don't know, just the usual. And she's like, no, like, what are some things that you do? So for me personally, like, I kind of am holding my hands like this, and I kind of just, so even this started to trigger like what we would say I would do basically when I'm anxious. And like just I was like, I kind of go into myself, and then the leaning down, and that kind of became, it kind of gave all my stressors like a meaning. Like I didn't really know that when I do these things, they have a deeper meaning behind them. So that's when Sarah and Haya would be like, yeah, you're throwing away the anxiety. So a lot of the movements came from my actual feelings that I experience when I'm going through like an anxiety attack or like a panic attack or something like that. So honestly, it made me feel very empowered to do that, because anyone who's had struggled with anxiety or had a panic attack knows that it's a completely out of control feeling. So for me to be able to create a beautiful and meaningful performance from stuff that I actually do when I'm anxious, that was like that was amazing.
It felt so raw to me. And when the instructor didn't like it after, I was like, what? I wanted to just barge right in and be like, Sheila, that was fantastic. Just watching. And again, I keep coming back to the word, but the tension where you're not quite sure. You're assuming she's doing this for class, but is she for a second? Or is something gone really wrong? It was an incredible moment that was amazing. I want to talk about the fact that you chose, I guess, how do you term a false pregnancy? Is that how you're terming it, Haya, or why you chose that method to continue Sheila's story and struggle as she's going through, the breakup with Eden?
I mean, it's the limit, for young women's like, don't get pregnant. It's like such a simple but impactful kind of rule, I would say, that's placed on you. And you can't quite tell how serious it is or what that means. There's like a lot of interpretation that kind of goes around that piece. And so it became important for me it's not a film about a woman getting pregnant and what the consequences or fallout of that is. It's about a woman who like we were discussing earlier is given freedom and trust from her parents, which she recognizes other women in her community maybe don't have that much trust and freedom from their parents. And so there's this responsibility of being a good girl, because you've been given freedom and you feel fortunate and lucky for that. But at the same time, you're given freedom to define your boundaries and to kind of act out of a sense of autonomy. So what is that? What does that look like for a character who's on that cusp of like turning into an adult? And so I think pregnancy is a very serious element. I mean, and it's very personal, and it goes right to the core of like existence and all the themes that we talked about earlier. And so I became just like fixated on that. And the fact that a pregnancy delusion is, you have every physical symptom of a pregnancy, but there's no child, or no baby, was just like the perfect metaphor for me of what this character is experiencing, and all the contradictions in the narrative that I was very interested in were like completely encapsulated in the premise of a pregnancy delusion. So for me, that became the center of the film, and then I had the freedom to explore the rest of it from a very grounded emotional perspective, because there was this hyper real element. There's like inherently something very surreal about a pregnancy delusion. So it was like the missing ingredient for me to be able to explore a story. There have been other stories of young women from different cultures and how do you figure out your place, but they've always felt very literal to me if I've seen them before in other examples of films or anything like that. But having a pregnancy delusion gave me that hyper reality that I really was craving in a narrative of this perspective, of this premise. So yeah, that's
right.
It became my anchor.
That resonates too so much with, for women, young women, hearing don't get pregnant, like you were saying off the top. I mean, I have a 12-year-old daughter, and I know that's going to be a conversation, and that was a conversation when I was growing up. So it almost seemed to me too, like by her having this pregnancy delusion, it's like saying, I did this thing that everyone told me not to do. I'm being as bad as I can be. Bad. Do you still care? Can you still love me?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think there's something very bittersweet about it, right? Because you also do get the hint that maybe there's a sense of comfort for Sheila, that this is like the secret that she's kept for herself and that she returns to and that she can sense inside of her. And she at once has this like very motherly capacity. She has younger siblings that she takes care of. She has like her parents that she wants to, her mother that she wants to be supportive towards. And but she also has like these very childlike qualities that are like very immature, you would say, for a person of that age. So yeah, I think the "Do you still love me" is like the central question. And I think it comes from a place where she didn't actually, it's the technicality of it is she didn't actually get pregnant. So it's just like a very liminal space. Like it's like there, I don't want to say anything definitive, but if I had to force some words towards it, it's like she didn't really do anything quote unquote bad, but she experienced what it would be like if she had done that, and she
Right.
found an answer that she would have, she got an answer without putting herself in. It's almost like she went into a fairy tale and came back, she
Right.
went into the woods and returned. It's like the hyper real space.
Right, which is why that walk to tell her parents again was like so stressful, because she's about to do this thing that could blow up her whole life. Arooj, do you want to weigh in on that a little bit, and what that process was like?
Sure. I think everything Haya said obviously is perfect. It just goes back to, for me, how I relate to it is that women are just, they're holders, in my opinion. In my 23 years of life, that's what I've kind of learned about being a woman and seeing women around me. It's like there's a famous quote too, that women are born with pain built in. So it's like just this experience that you're kind of holding so much inside your own body. It's like you're an actual vessel. So that part of it was like super interesting to me, because when I even read the script, I was like, but you never really know, because obviously after you're done watching the movie and you see her scene with a therapist, you know that it was never an actual pregnancy, but just everything she experienced and everything she goes through. I feel like it's such an intimate film. Like it's shot in such a way that's you're kind of feeling the feelings with Sheila, which is why it's so impactful, because there's no possible way that it was a fake pregnancy. That's how I looked at it, because I'm like, she really experienced every single emotion, and the fear, the anxiety, also the comfort, like Haya said. Like she was also at one point very confident that she can take care of herself, her baby. She was very motherly, protective. So,
And it kept her tethered in a way to Eden.
Yes. Yeah. But I think, yes, in a way to Eden too, but the way that I saw it, it was mostly keeping herself. She wasn't alone. I think a lot of things with pregnancy that I've heard growing up, like my mom would always be like, I never felt alone when I was pregnant with you. Like we were like buddies or whatever. So I kind of saw it as she was having a very isolated experience, because she couldn't tell her friends, because she thought they wouldn't understand. She couldn't tell her parents. So the one being that she thought was with her through it all, and that would be with her through it all, was her baby. And that's how I kind of looked at it. That's where I came from, a protective background. And yeah, that's how I kind of rationalized it.
Yeah, having two children myself, I can attest to what your mom said, and how you're explaining what your thought process was. It's your thing. It's yours alone while you're pregnant. Your closest buddy. It's right. You're exactly right, that you can talk to and be with, and no matter what circumstance, every minute of every day. Before we wrap up, ladies, I've enjoyed this conversation so much. I do want to know what's going on next for everybody. Haya, we know you're in Spain, and we're all terribly jealous, but do you want to talk a little more about what's next for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm writing my next film right now. It's in development, I I also do a lot of short format work. So that's why I'm in Spain right now. So yeah, I'm gonna keep creating work. That's how I stay living.
I hear that, my friend. Arooj, what's on for you next?
I was thinking I would explore more of acting. Like I never really thought it was an option because, you know, my dad's an actor. So I was like, he's got that covered. Like I was like, we've got someone in the family to do it. But after doing Haya's film, I got to explore that passion of mine. So I'm excited to pursue that. And then other than that, I would, you know, apply to teachers college and do social work because I have a degree in child and youth studies. So it's very two different things that I could do, but I'm deciding to focus on acting after I graduate.
Right. Get that acting family dynasty going. That'll be amazing. I just loved it, and I wish you every success with Quickening. I hope a whole bunch of people see it because it is beautiful and it is thought provoking, all those sorts of things. And I just want to point out as well that our next feature film is Alice, and that is on March 24th, and we will actually be doing that Q&A live when we do that. So we hope you can join us. And I was remiss off the top. I wanted to thank Capstick McCollum, a female-led accounting firm. I did say that at the beginning. As I was saying it, I knew I said it already. Ladies, have a wonderful International Women's Day. Wishing you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.